The same button. It's just that. Yeah, it's the same. If you need to change it, that's the same place you change it.
Yeah.
All right, John, how you feeling? Is there any questions you've got?
It's 2 hours.
So as you guys may or may not know,
Worst case scenario, feel
so
free to send me a text if something
Selectboard is
goes wrong,
remote.
but I think you've got it. You covered a lot.
have an absolute discussion with them.
Thank you.
Like last time, when you have something to say, just go up to that.
There you go. Yeah.
Just the meeting started.
I unmuted ourselves. I had us muted while we were waiting for people to arrive, but we're at 5:30, so.
Okay.
All right, so your audio's on, your signal's going out.
YouTube, and I have to mute us, I just,
You go to the Zoom screen. It's over here. And yeah, don't forget.
the Zoom stream,
I had trouble getting in. Where are Gordon and Mary? Good question.
So-
Good question. Chris.
So Phil, I think, Phil, you should be able to speak if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm in now, but I tried the link numerous times and it just was dead. And then finally I rebooted and it came back in. So it could be my machine. But I certainly had some hoops to jump through.
So Gordon, both of them are popped in, but they're in the attendees, so I'll just have them pull forward as a panelist. So Gordon Richardson, Mary O'Brien, will have to pull forward.
Sounds good. Gordon Richardson, we want to promote to panelist. Mary O'Brien, yep, you can go ahead and promote her. So they're panelists. Other people are only allowed to talk, so you won't do that again. It'll be just the clicking to the left. It should be on.
So, Mary and Gordon, you just got an invite to, as a panelist, you want to say okay to that? Gordon's coming in now. And I see Mary coming in as well.
Dave, can I also make a request that if we receive an email that's labeled like Zoom, it didn't look like a real link for me, and I was really shy, but I did finally click on it. So I'm wondering if we could put a date or label it somehow.
Okay.
I don't know if we can do that, but just know that technically they're supposed to come before each meeting, and I did try. I was going to send you an email, just didn't get to it today. But going with the remote type setting here, look for those the day of the meeting, each meeting there. The difference is it brings you in as a panelist immediately rather than us having to pull you forward.
Okay, I'll certainly look for it.
got it. All right, I see what you're saying.
All right, Jay, it's all you. Here's Dale. Have a good night. Good luck.
Mary, before you get started, we do have 4 Mill Street residents here at Damon Hall. And just when the agenda comes up, they've been, I kind of went over how they'll come up and they'll speak and they should be able to interact with you guys quite freely.
Okay. I just need to pull up my agenda. I wasn't able to print it out, so that's kind of a drag. Hold on.
Dave,
Yep.
would you make note of the public present in person?
Yes, thank you, Martha.
Okay, I think we'll get started after Dave's set with that. So I've got 5:33 right now. It's good to see everybody. I'm expecting to have a jolly time this evening, and I think it will be an extended meeting. Just FYI, I hope everybody's got something to drink and they've eaten dinner. I don't want anybody's sugar levels crashing. Dave, you all set?
They're passing around the pad now, so I think we're all set.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's call the meeting to order at 5:34 on January 18th, 2022. We now have the minutes from the last meeting. I'm looking for a motion on those minutes, if anyone would care to make those.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of January 3rd.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. Jim, we typically go by consensus. Are you in agreement with the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, everybody? Phil?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The minutes passed. Now we're on to the orders, the warrants. I need a motion for those.
I'll make a motion to accept the accounts payable up to January 18th, 2022.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the accounts payable?
I do have a couple, Mary.
Go ahead, Gordon.
I just wanted to ask Dave about the tax mapping. How often does that happen?
I believe that's quarterly, Gordon.
Quarterly. Okay. And the other one is about the street lights again. Are the street lights included with the arrangement that we have with Jay Boeri for the power that he produces?
Gordon, I'd have to look into that. I believe the agreement with Jay Boeri is for the buildings.
Yeah, I was just thinking of solar. Some excuse to have solar. That's all. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Anybody else?
Just
Have any
had
questions? Go
one
ahead, Jim.
question. So Dave, it was around Irving Energy. And the only thing that my eyes caught there is that we seem to be paying a different per gallon rate for each area. I just didn't know if there was a way to get kind of a bulk discount across all the different accounts.
James, some of that's propane and some of that's fuel oil.
Okay, so it'd be a difference.
So, yeah, so there'd be a difference between the two. So, like Damon Hall and part of the highway garage and, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, run on propane. The library, rec center, part of the highway garage run on fuel, so it's kind of,
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Thank you.
Bill or Martha, any questions? No? Okay. So is everyone in favor of this motion?
Yes.
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 Okay, motion passed. Thank you. On to item number 2 on the agenda, which is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments?
I have one potential adjustment.
Okay,
I may need to step away for 5 minutes to take a call from my vet. My dog's in the hospital, so,
oh,
so I may wander off camera for 5 minutes and then come back.
all right, thank you. I hope everything goes well there, Jim.
Yeah, it's a scheduled surgery. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't think,
Someone
Martha?
has, Victoria Davis has her hand up.
okay,
can you allow Victoria Davis to speak?
Okay. Um,
Vicky, we can't hear you. I don't know if it's your computer or if it's CATV.
Mary, it's on our side. You gotta wait a minute.
Okay,
She should be near the top.
okay. Oh, here she is, okay. There you go.
Okay, Victoria, all you need, there you go.
Hi, sorry, it's not Victoria, it's Rob Sangster. I was trying to get to Gordon's question about the streetlights being on J. Borelli. They're not. When we were working on the Energy Committee a few years back, we were trying to get Green Mountain Power to help switch those over to LED or more efficient because the town was paying for those. So unless that's changed in the very recent time frame, we are paying, the town pays for them directly to Green Mountain Power.
Those are our LED lights.
Yeah, but before they were LEDs, I know the town was paying for them, and that was the motivation, was because we were paying for them to get them to LEDs.
They must be partners.
Gordon,
Thank you, Rob.
Oh, thanks. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I think we're done with that. I don't think we need to take an action on that. So item number 3 is public comments, and this is for people that bring stuff up that's not, or issues up that are not already on the agenda, because we'll be discussing those then later. So does anyone have anything they'd like to comment on or ask a question that's not related to items that are already on the agenda? You can raise your hand in the chat and then you'll be unmuted.
Victoria Davis again raised. So Rob,
Go ahead, Rob.
Whoops, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
So I joined to find out, and it may be later in the meeting, the town is going to vote about how the town meeting is going to be held this year, whether it's virtual or live.
Yes, that's a second item of business under the old business. So it's coming up.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Dave, do you see Are there any other hands raised?
Yeah, we have Rebecca Genevieve. Can you, go ahead, Rebecca.
Hi, I was just wondering, could we put out at the end of the ARPA meeting, there was a direct email, I believe, created for people to contribute ideas to. Can we send that out on some format publicly to people? Rather than the lining up in two fictitious plans that is currently happening?
Yeah, we can send that back out, Rebecca. Just for
I
this.
just think it might be smart.
For this meeting, it is ARPA, A-R-P-A, at Hartland VT, that's Victor Tom, at heartlandvt.org. So that's ARPA at heartlandvt.org.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Dave, anybody else raise their hand?
Now, Mary, I'm just gonna go over a small little update on correspondence, but those primarily will go to the ARPA meeting, but I just want to give you a heads up.
You're muted, Dave.
I did that.
Okay, thanks.
My
Go
back.
ahead. Yep.
Just a quick update on 3 correspondence. They're actually met for the ARPA meeting, but I just wanted to give you an update on that. That'll be under correspondence, Mary.
Okay, all right. So now item number 4, on to old business. And our first item is the Mill Street Bridge discussion. And my understanding is there are 4 neighbors from Mill Street here who would like to talk about the issue that happened with the Mill Street Bridge. So if you want to come up and identify yourselves one at a time, that'd be great.
Keith Avery. And a couple things on it was, one is on the bridge itself. Since it's been repaired, there's one area where the boards were never butted up. The issue with the bridge was rot. It's now packed full of sand, snow, everything else. And I was just wondering when there would be a fix to that.
Have you spoken with Dave about this?
I have not spoken with Dave about this, no.
Okay. So now I expect, Dave, you are aware of this. If you would like to respond.
Yep, so the boards off the side are not an easy fix. There is water hazards, et cetera, that need to be dealt with, OSHA regulations, so we'll take that into consideration. The snow and the sand will, I've spoken with the highway crew, that will be part of the yearly maintenance. Guess that's my quick answer to that. I think this will probably come up at some point, but in some of the conversations I have had, at some point, that bridge will need to be rehabilitated, which will be a large project and will probably need to be shut down. But that's not quick, that's not easy. It's not gonna raise the weight limit on the bridge to any extravagant level, but you know, it's been a while. That was part of the discussion with the state of Vermont engineer. Again, there's kind of a prolonged process to that, to working with the state of Vermont, and it would be several years before we, get to that point, but, that would be down the road.
Okay, but this is not one of the boards on the side of the bridge. This is, if you're coming in from this way on the second bridge, the one that was just had repair done to it. It's
Yep.
the ramps itself. On the ramp itself,
Okay?
It's probably like that. That was never butted up when it was done, when the repair was just done.
On the new side,
Yes.
that's not something I'm aware of.
I can show you the picture I took of it tonight on my way here. It's been this way since they got done, so I couldn't believe that, you know, whoever went and looked at it or the work being done, that it would, somebody hadn't seen it. I mean, that's only half dug out. That's right on the ramp itself. So if you're coming from my house, when you come on the first bridge, it's the ramp on the left.
Keith, I'd have to look at it in person to get a good feel for it.
Okay?
Well, thanks for bringing that to Dave's attention, and he can talk to Bill Barrows about it. Do you have another suggestion or question?
Yep, David just touched on it. Again, I'm gonna ask, to try and get the limit raised on the bridge that just got repaired. My truck and trailer is 9,960 pounds empty. I cannot go and get a load of pellets and come in because I'm overweight.
What bridge?
The bridge that just got repaired, the one that has the 10,000 limit on it. The other bridge is rated at 16,000.
Okay, I don't know that any of us can address that. I think that would be a specialist, a bridge engineer who would have to answer that, whether that's possible or not. So.
Okay, and that's what I brought up in the last meeting was all the inspection reports I have going back to '06, there has not been any load analysis done on the bridge. And I had asked at that last meeting, why hasn't one been done?
So Keith, my understanding is that one did originate from the state of Vermont. Again, with the conversation with the bridge and engineer, the 10,000 pound weight limit would have come from the state of Vermont. It hasn't been raised nor lowered during inspections through that time. So it doesn't mean that one wasn't done 20 years ago. And
Right. No, what I have only goes back to '06. So I guess I would have to reach out to the state on that?
Would that be the Department of Transportation? Like, who would you even reach out to find out if there was a specified limit?
What's that?
Can I move the table that way a little bit? I can't see that screen at all with this thing here.
You can either move that there or we can move that way.
All right, thank you. Okay, I can see now.
Jim, that would be the Vermont Agency of Transportation.
Okay, so it's up to them. Okay. The third item I had was, in the last meeting, we were told that the emergency vehicles and personnel were told how they could get in or that there was a gate or whichever. Last Saturday night, we had roughly, I don't know, 10 or 12, something like that, quarter 12, whatever it was. I received a phone call from somebody on Mill Street wanting to know if I can get that gate open. I told him it wasn't locked. I have no chain, no gate on it. The chain that's on it is a town chain. But I went over to open it. The ambulance was already there at that point, and they weren't happy because they didn't know there's a gate. The only gate they knew of was coming off Route 5 onto Quarry Road. So they said they were not aware of a gate. They were told of one gate. So they were questioning why that gate was there and why there was a chain on it. So I guess my question is, the communication of what I've been told is not the same as what I get from other people. So either they know it's there or they don't know it's there, or, you know, I mean, the town wants to be in charge of that gate, and the town needs to make sure people know it's there. And if it's gonna be an issue, there should be somebody that they can call to find out what's going on or to deal with it.
So I would respond that communication is imperfect, and despite everyone's best efforts, it doesn't always get to everyone, and that's unfortunate that that happened. And hopefully the ambulance people will go back to their headquarters and communicate to their colleagues what happened. Dave, do you want to elaborate?
I can only say is that it's my firm belief that Hartland and Hartford and Windsor are aware of the situation, as is 911, as it's been communicated to me directly by Hartland Fire.
Yeah, this was a Hartford.
And Hartford is well aware and is in the loop. I'm not sure why. I don't believe it was Hartford Fire calling you.
No, it wasn't. I said it was a resident of Mill Street. that
And
called.
nothing has worked its way back to me from Hartford Fire or Heartland Fire that an issue arose with first responders. And actually, Heartland first responders usually respond as well via car and beat the ambulance, and they certainly would have been privy, so I'm not sure. I would have to speak with the chief, but my understanding is that line of communication's been made. I'd have to double check on it just to see what happened that particular instance and how it was handled. And again, nothing has made its way from Heartland Fire for response to me as that being an issue.
Okay. I'll talk to Hartford's chief and see on that. The other thing is, the last item that I have is, I had a lengthy meeting with Twin State Sand and Gravel, two different people there, Seth and Dwayne. And the information I'm given from them is not the same information that's coming from the town. So most of these items, it seems to be that it's either miscommunication or, something along those lines. But when I go to the two different sources, it's different information. And I feel that a lot of that information is what has some of the people on Mill Street all riled up and everything else, as far as the way that it was presented to us, as far as deliveries or septic or trash pickup or any of that stuff. Just so that you guys are aware, all the conversations that I had with them is they are not asking that we call and schedule anything with them. The only time they want to schedule is during their winter months. But that would be it. Other than that, normal business hours or anything, any vehicle can come in. They have asked that you don't allow cars and, they don't want that traffic and stuff. But they said any delivery vehicle during normal business hours when their gate is open can come and go. They do not need permission. So I don't know if you want to put that in an email and send it out to the residents, whether you want to get a hold of Twin State and confirm that yourselves and send it out that way. But I think it would make some people there feel better, because I received a call yesterday, same thing about the gate and how can you get a fuel truck through there. I told them, as far as I know, the upper gate was open at that time, because I know with the recent storm, they've been hauling a few loads out of there. But other than that, they don't need any special permission, information, anything like that with Twin State. They're just asking that it not be used for cars. They don't want, somebody on Mill Street saying, hey, that's a short way to run up the hill and run up to Dunkin' Donuts or something. But they said they do not have an issue with any of the delivery vehicles coming in or out that way. The only thing would be, get the gate open at the bottom.
Well, that's good to know. Like I said before, communication is always imperfect, and it's really hard to get everybody on the same page and understanding the same set of facts. So thank you. Dave, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, having spent 3 months negotiating with Twin State, that's not my understanding, so.
Well, that's why I say, if somebody wants to reach out to them or whichever,
They were very adamant with me that they wanted to keep traffic to a minimum on that road, and to have free access up and down Quarry Road would be news to me.
So it does sound like, no matter, if you talk to different people and you ask 3 different people the same question, you might get 3 different answers. That's just the way the world works sometimes.
I do on a
So-
regular basis.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it would be worth just having a letter of understanding with the fire and rescue services that might respond to that area, and a letter of understanding with, the quarry there. And, just have that published for those entities, for us and for the residents, so that everybody knows the rules.
We have a signed agreement with Twin State.
Get my own picture, I get yours.
You
We
do,
have-
on the usage of the road?
How to make that work.
Correct.
I don't have any other,
Do you need?
and Matt will have the same thing.
Hey, Gordon, can you mute, please? Thank you. What did you say, Dave? Or Jim? I don't know who was.
Well, I think the last thing Dave said was that he has a signed letter or agreement with Twin State. So if that's the case, I would think that that letter would outline the rules that we need to abide by.
It could also be that Twin State, after this has been going on for a while, has relaxed a little bit about their expectations, so, or their fears. So maybe their attitudes have changed. And that's what they conveyed to Mr. Avery. I don't know. Okay, is there anybody else from Mill Street who would like to come up to the mic and speak?
I guess not.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if somebody was in the act of coming out. I can't see that. All right,
Okay.
so
Asking for you.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said we were asking for you, and there are no more questions on Mill Street.
Okay. All right, so then we thank you for coming in and discussing this further, and it's been helpful. Appreciate it. All right, so we're done with that. We're on to the second item of old business, which is town meeting and COVID-19. So does anybody want to start off that discussion?
Mary, can you recognize me?
Sure. Hi, Gordon.
Hi. Okay, so I've written up a little something I'm going to read here to get this underway. During and since our last board meeting, I've been going back and forth over the issue of delaying town meeting as we did last year. With a letter to the board with the backing of about 50 citizens concerning this issue, I have decided to take a stand for delay. Therefore, I move that we delay town meeting for about 2 months in accordance with the legislation recently passed for that purpose.
Okay, thanks for the motion. Is there a second?
I would like to second that, Mary.
Okay, Martha seconds. And now we'll have a discussion. Does anybody want to start? Pat Richardson? You're on mute.
Okay, if it's okay to start now, Mary, I would like to thank the board for thinking about our proposal. I
I'd say the letter speaks for itself, and many more people than we had time to reach would agree. We fear that 2 years of a remote meeting is a COVID death sentence for the open floor meeting we've had for over 230 years. I for one, have not missed a town meeting since I came to Hartland 50 years ago. And actually, that's 20% of the time we've been holding meetings. If the voters should decide to end the open floor meeting, so be it. But I'm darned if I want to let a virus do it without fighting back. So that's the motivation behind the phone calls and that Matt and I made and the letter we have sent to you.
Pat, I'd like to interrupt you for a second, just because I think we all need to be on mute, especially Gordon, because we're getting a reverberation. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary. We are in the same room. Doesn't fix it. Well, I'm using earphones. So I can't. I do hear myself. So I will now mute myself.
So are you done?
I am done. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I know Matt planned to say something too. I don't know if he's here or if there's someone else who would like to speak. I think Rob Sangster was interested and Chuck Fenton. I don't know if they're there. And we did not ask people to address the meeting. So the discussion should be among yourselves, presumably, unless Matt shows up.
Well, has anybody raised their hand who would like to weigh in on this? Oh, Matt would like to. So if Matt could be unmuted by CATV.
Actually, Nikki Buck has her hand up. Matt doesn't have his hand up. Mary.
Okay. How about Nikki? Could Nikki Buck be unmuted?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Can you, okay. I haven't done this yet. So I know that you have a proposal in front of you to delay town meeting until we may be able to have it in person. And while I'm super excited to have it in person, I'm speaking from the administration standpoint from the school board, that it makes it really difficult to hire people when we don't have a budget passed. And hiring season for the school starts in March and then goes into April. And we're just really concerned if we were to delay town meeting that we would be facing what we did last year, which is just a lot of uncertainty in our hiring process and a lot of inability to attract good people because we can't say that we definitively have a budget for them. So provisional hires are less attractive in this atmosphere. So I just wanted to pipe in on that one for discussion.
Thanks, Nikki. Go ahead, Pat.
The school meeting and the town meeting are absolutely separate. We're only talking about the town meeting tonight because it's the select board that has the responsibility for that one. We're not talking about the school meeting. The school meeting can go forward just as it would normally on its own. It always does. The warnings are separate. People who sign them are separate. The people who run the meeting are separate, except for the moderators, the same person. But we're not talking about the school meeting. We have no right to talk about the school meeting at this meeting. It's not our meeting. It's the school meeting, school director's meeting. Thank you.
I think your point was to do with the budget, but Nikki, do you want to respond?
It's still the budget.
Yeah, it's a financial impact if we end up having to do, if we have to run Australian ballot for the school and then later run Australian ballot for the town. That's a financial impact by having to run a vote twice. And it's also confusing for the taxpayers. That's why we chose to join with the town meeting last year. was to have one vote for everybody.
There's always one ballot, but there's still two separate meetings. The school meeting can go forward regardless of what the selectmen do. As a matter of fact, several years ago, the school meeting was held in May intentionally because the school would then learn later in the year what the state aid would be. They were very separate several years ago. So they have not always been linked at the same time.
Okay, so if anyone else wants to give a perspective on this issue, just raise your hand. And you'll be.
Rebecca has her hand up, as does Matt and Sarah Bruce.
Oh, okay. I can't see any of that for some reason. So, Matt?
Hi, Rebecca here, actually.
Okay.
I really want to support the school also, having been in that position when No Child Left Behind went through in a different state. It really ties your hands. You absolutely lose your best people. You're forced to pink slip people sometimes that you never would have. That's a contractual thing. Their dates are set in stone. Anything we can do to not work against that's important. My understanding was that the school budget was already, no matter what, anything else, COVID or unrelated, was already Australian balloted anyway. So I'm not for or against anybody's suggestion at this point, only to say that I'm really in favor of delaying this decision based on better information. And my gut instinct is I want to know where you came up with 2 months out of the blue, because 2 months from when we would regularly have our town meeting is when everybody starts traveling again for spring break. It's when college kids come home. It's when all the summer people from all the southern states that don't have similar rules to us come back. Things get way more complicated. I've got hard numbers that show you that irregardless of all the safety precautions we've had, some of the pandemic is reliant on the movement of people. You don't need to bother to believe or not believe anybody's science or anything like that. But I just think delay indefinitely. We tried that last year and we still didn't have it in person. I am not in favor in any way, shape, or form of this informational format when it's sort of perceived as a done deal at that point. And the good people of Hartland just want to vote and do their part. And they're going to rubber stamp anything you put in front of them. And I can't afford us to keep doing that.
You can do Matt. Matt needs to go up next.
Who's next?
Hey, Mary. It's Matt Dunn.
Hey, Matt.
So,
Go ahead.
So thank you for bringing up the subject and having the discussion. And Nikki, and I don't think we've had a chance to talk about this before it went forward, but there is no reason at all that the school budget could not go forward to the traditional Australian ballot on the March date that was planned, as well as having an informational meeting that would come.
We can't hear you.
I just got muted for some reason.
Okay.
Sorry. You can go ahead now.
Matt's muted.
I keep getting muted, so I think we're good right now. And there actually isn't necessarily an additional cost, since the vote that can take place in March can take place in March, and then the town officers can be voted on at the town meeting at a later date. So the concerns of a delayed school budget, have certainly been heard. I'm both the school moderator and separately the town moderator, and I would certainly still plan to do moderate an informational session for the school in advance of the school budget vote by Australian ballot, and that would not come in conflict. And I do. I would also just a quick note to Rebecca's comment is that the reason we didn't do it in person last year at a later date was that the decision was not to do it, not to have the option of doing it in person. And the experiences in Plainfield and Cornish was that actually turnout went up when they had it at a later date and chose to do it outside for safety concerns. And folks from those towns would be happy to provide information on that experience if folks are interested in it. But thank you Pat for presenting the request, and happy to answer any other questions regarding this, the letter that we submitted.
Okay, is it, I'm not sure who's next.
Sarah Bruce
Sarah?
is next. Sarah,
Okay.
then I got my hand up after that, Mary.
Okay. Go ahead, Sarah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. I don't want to upset anybody, but I think many of you know I look at this somewhat differently. And I don't think it's just because I'm relatively new to Vermont or Hartland. I would ask the Select Board to look at the current COVID Omicron situation and whatever follows as an opportunity. Specifically, an opportunity to act on a motion that was made, seconded, and approved by the Select Board at its October 18th, 2021 meeting. And that motion was, quote unquote, to examine how technology can be used to increase the inclusiveness of town meeting in its current format for town meeting 2022, unquote. In my opinion, under the current pandemic circumstances, which are no guarantee to be cleared in 2 months or 3 months or whatever, it is best to have a remote town meeting, but not simply an information meeting as last year. I personally found last year's meeting to be very, very good, but I think we can do much better with currently available technology. I suggest an interactive Zoom call, not a webinar in which information is simply presented in one direction without opportunity for back and forth discussion among those in attendance, the powerful component of an in-person town meeting. An excellent example of such an interactive Zoom call is last Thursday's Select Board meeting facilitated by Sarah Raitt from Two Rivers to solicit ideas on how to best spend ARPA money. The meeting was particularly well structured, and so it was very productive, giving us a long list of ideas to refine and prioritize at the next meeting and thereafter. Everyone present had the opportunity to present their idea or ideas. Each person was called on in an orderly manner by name, and there was some back and forth, much like town meeting. Now, it is true that there were only about 40 people on that call last Thursday, and you may say, well, that's not enough, but that's not a Zoom limitation. The next day, I was on a similar call with 105 people. And I think it was last December, I was on a Zoom call with 248 people. So this is doable and is doable now. Therefore, I suggest we use existing technology to enhance a virtual town meeting to replicate as much as possible the powerful direct democracy that we speak of, that component of the traditional town meeting. It turns out we could actually do the voting on Zoom. You can control who's on the call. You can accommodate more than one voter on a device, but the state hasn't fully developed that or approved it. But I think we could still have a virtual meeting with the interactive benefits of a traditional town meeting on the first Tuesday of March. And so I will leave it at that, and thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. That was an interesting perspective. Dave, are you up next?
Yeah, I had my hand raised, and then I think Matt Dunn's got something. He's got his hand raised again, unless otherwise he just put it down.
Okay, go ahead.
I got a few things to comment on here. One, and I believe I'm speaking for the administrative staff, including myself, on this, but we don't necessarily look at the COVID pandemic as a death sentence to town meeting or anything else. What we're trying to put together here is a logical way to have town meeting efficiently and during a pandemic, nothing more, nothing less than that. It seems that this is being put in simplistic terms, and I disagree with some of that. There is a problem with splintering off school and the town. Both school and town information, and in particular budget information, is in the town report, and it also goes out in the flyer. The flyer needs to go to the printer on Friday. Today is Tuesday, so that needs to go to the printer on Friday. If the school holds theirs, it would still need to go for the school. And the town report needs to go about the first week in February. Both the flyer and the town report have the warnings for both the town and the school, and it puts forth, you know, how we're going to vote, or in addition to that, information such as the informational meeting. Now, if town meeting gets put off, that Friday deadline doesn't hold true anymore, but that's if both the town and the school are put off. Even if the town and school are put off, you still need to put out a flyer and a town report, which again, the flyer needs to go in the mail 30 days before town meeting, which means it needs to go to the printer a good 2 weeks, 3 weeks before that. So we need to back up, and we need to have an idea as to what it is that we're doing, and have some semblance of a plan. Last year worked very well in May, but we made the decision for Australian ballot in May last year tonight. And we made that decision to go Australian ballot, which enabled us to then put out a flyer in the mail to the residents in early February, notifying them that town meeting was not going to occur in March. That was both the town and the school. Again, to Nikki Buck's point, it's going to get very confusing to the taxpayer. If the town puts off a town meeting is not in March, but yet the school vote is. We then put out information for the mail-in ballot. Don't forget, we are planning a mail-in ballot. If you do the school and the town separately, you're going to have possibly 2 mail-in ballots. Again, there is an expense to that, although I think we can offset it, but certainly there is a complication to that and a duplication to that. And then again, the mailer and the town report need to go out. So this thought process that we can just put it off until May and then decide whether we are going to do Australian ballot or in-person town meeting, I don't think is realistic, and I don't think you're taking into consideration the details of what needs to occur in order to make town meeting happen. The other thing is why, and again, I'll point out that this was discussed last select board meeting. I was under the understanding that there was a consensus of the select board at last meeting to move forward with March 1st town meeting with an informational meeting in that we mail out ballots. That was my understanding, and that's what we've been working on ever since. Now, why is it that we are interested in a March 1st town meeting? It is not unlike the school's argument. The school says, hey, we have got to go out and hire people. Well, the town has other things that it is doing as we get into the spring. We've got paving projects. We have the Three Corners intersection project that looks as though it is going to happen this summer. Everybody's excited about ARPA and wants us to get going on that. We've got ARPA things that need to be set in motion, possibly the walking path. And that's not all the other administrative stuff that we do towards May, which includes audit stuff for the end of the year and other administrative tasks. That's not even including if the budget fails. And if the budget fails for either the town or the school, and particularly with the school, they need to turn around and revote it quickly. And a mid-May date just doesn't give us a whole lot of room for that. So there's multiple reasons why we, from the administrative staff, and you know, I'm not even speaking for Brian, who would have to put together 2 whole ballots, 2 whole votes for school and then the town. And the possibility of trying to even do an outside, again, we'd probably be looking at a tent if you wanted to go outside and trying to get a tent and set up a tent 30 days prior to an event in May when you got people looking to do outdoor weddings, I also don't think is realistic. So again, to come back to mainly the discussion from last select board meeting, again, my understanding by consensus was that we were moving forward with March 1st. The only thing that we needed to do was wait for the legislation to pass to allow us to do this and to incorporate the school in a informational meeting and continue with the process. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Dave. Phil's had his hand up, and then Christine. Go ahead, Phil. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Mary, is this the appropriate time for me to give some comments or?
I think it's highly appropriate, Phil.
Okay, thank you. First, I thank you to Gordon for thinking and putting a motion on the floor to start the discussion. A comment to Sarah. Sarah, I have been meeting with past colleagues, both from the Thayer School of Engineering and the past director of computing at Dartmouth. And this is not an easy task to sort of have a very successful webinar. I would ask you to note if you're looking at webinars and Zoom or some sort of hybrid, but it's expensive and not easy. I would love to pursue it. And I'm still paying attention to that. To Matt and Pat, I'm a little bit jealous. You said your letter was signed by 47 people. Well, last Thursday, we had 36 participants in the ARPA discussion. When you take away 10 or 11, between select board members, the moderator and town staff, I counted like 24, a fairly low turnout for a town. So we're struggling with right now with just getting people involved. Your letter to the select board said that the select board needs to make hard decisions, but that's why we're elected. And I feel that this is a hard decision. It was a hard decision to cancel Old Home Days a year and a few months ago. It was a hard decision last March to sort of realize we were not going to have the normal town meeting. I don't think any of us tonight are talking about an end to town meeting. Mm-hmm. What I think we are talking about tonight is being practical and looking at public health. And I feel strongly that we need to make a decision, that we had a consensus just at the last meeting, and now all of a sudden the consensus is eroding, that we go forward with Australian ballot and a virtual informational meeting. I can't guarantee any more than anyone in this meeting can that the pandemic is going to subside. There were conversations today where people were saying that Vermont numbers were down. Well, just this week, 2 members of my family tested positive, not in Vermont, one in the Berkshires, just on the Vermont border, and the other in the hinterlands of New Jersey, both boosted and vaccinated. I don't want to mess around. I want to make a decision tonight. As Dave laid out, there's a lot of operational pieces that need to sort of unfold. So I'm going forward offering a hard decision with compassion, with full knowledge that I'd rather not, but to say that we should move forward with the Australian ballot and a virtual informational meeting.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate hearing your opinion. Christine, if CATV will unmute you, I think you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Great. Thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Christine Bourne. I'm the principal at Hartland Elementary School. And I appreciate the discussion and the sentiment, and I would wholeheartedly support an in-person meeting. I can't support it in May because it's as Nikki shared with you, it really has an impact on hiring at the school, which we struggled with last year. I don't see the hiring pool increasing this winter. We have struggled to fill positions because the hiring pool is small. And so, it does really impede our work if the meeting is delayed. And one other thing that happens when I'm not able to hire, I don't know what staff I have, and I can't go forward with a schedule for the following year, which really needs a lot of time and effort and energy spent to create it. And so delaying the meeting also delays that, which has further impact. So I just wanted to share that I really wish we could be in person. It's hard not having the community and the school and the parents, and we want nothing more than to have that. Again, it's just not safe right now, and we understand that. But I'm in full support of going forward with a remote meeting in March. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate your perspective. Let's see. I don't know, Dave, does anybody else have their hand raised?
Yeah, Brian Strafolinos had his raised for a bit, and then we got to go back to Matt Dunn after that.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Just a couple comments, things I wanted to share. I think Dave touched on a lot of the issues with regards to scheduling and preparation for town meeting. We've all been under the assumption that we would be moving forward with Australian ballot, holding the election on the 1st. If we were to postpone, there are a number of statutory deadlines that would need to be shifted, and we would need to have a hard decision on a date in order to essentially plan and schedule around those statutory deadlines. There are a number of different deadlines that apply to effectively planning for and executing town meeting. If people are interested in any specifics, I'd be happy to point those out. But we're in a position currently that we're ready to hold town meeting on the 1st, and we just need your decision in order to execute town meeting. I think it's important to recognize, with the exception of one, or you could say 1+ elected official, being the town moderator and the school moderator, everyone else that works for the town, that is elected, that is appointed, that is hired, would advocate, has been advocating to hold our town meeting, as well as the schools, on March 1st via Australian ballot, via mail-in ballot, so that we can safely hold town meeting, and we can also give all of our citizens the choice to participate. I firmly believe if we were to try to hold town meeting in person, whether that be March 1st or at some proposed date in the future, that we would be diminishing our voters' choices to participate. Whether you have a fixed opinion of the pandemic or not, we all have our personal opinions, and there are many that are very concerned still to this day, and may very well be concerned at a later date about the pandemic, and that could diminish their ability to participate. So I would urge the select board to listen to your staff and please just make a decision so that we can move forward, we can safely and effectively execute town meeting, and we can adhere to the statutory deadlines that are upon us, and we can also move forward with some of the important projects that we need to move forward with, and not have to be questioning what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, when we know that we can safely and effectively have a town meeting via Australian ballot, similar to all the general elections now, which is by mail-in ballot. And I just hope that you consider not just personal opinions, but the safety of your residents and the, for lack of a better term, potential burden on some of your staff town-wide if we postpone, let alone postpone with no date in mind. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I'd like to hear from Matt and then Jim, please.
Getting it off mute. Thank you, Mary. So I appreciate the comments that both Dave and Phil and Brian have offered. I'd like to respond with a couple of comments directly to the points that were made. The first is that not only has the last 3 elected town moderators signed on to the letter, but I believe, if my count is right, 11 out of the 12 elected JPs also signed on to the letter. So it is more than just an individual who is elected that is advocating for postponing with the hopes that we could have an in-person town meeting by some mechanism or another. The second item that I'd like to address, and this is to Nikki and to Christine, is that I, for one, heard loud and clear the concerns from the school. The letter that Pat Richardson and I presented intentionally did not include the school meeting because we understand the concerns over the delay. I do recall when the town and school meeting have been held separately, it worked fine. The marginal cost of doing 2 different votes was not a huge deal. And the school informational meeting and the vote can take place on March 1, while still delaying town meeting, which is the only meeting that we still continue to have in person. The third item that I want to address is on the statutory deadlines, and Brian, happy to sit down and walk through them with you, because I know you're much more up to date on the specifics of them, but my understanding from the Secretary of State is that there is a 30-day warning period that has to happen ahead of time, but that is the distance in advance that you need to warn a town meeting. So there is certainly time to be able to make a decision as to when a town meeting can be held, but there can be a determined date to do it. The other comment that's been made is that there was a consensus that was had 2 weeks ago as to whether or not to cancel town meeting for this year or not. I and Patricia are both people who have stated in the past, last year when this was deliberated, that we felt it was important to consider options to allow for the possibility of an in-person town meeting, specifically because it is not the same as an Australian ballot vote. And in fact, voting by Australian ballot and having an informational meeting is explicitly not a town meeting. And I, for one, was not aware that this was, that it was being proposed to go back to the same process as last year, to cancel town meeting this year, until after that select board meeting was completed. And I had heard from others that that was the discussion that was taking place. I immediately reached out to the town moderator, as well as some of the members of the select board, to try to verify what the conversation was. And it was at that time, which was the first moment when Patricia and I had noticed that this was the proposal that might be made, that we had the chance to reach out to our friends, neighbors, other elected officials, including the ones who are unpaid volunteers to be able to actually administer the voting process and the checklists and the like. And when it was presented as an opportunity to postpone with the hopeful potential of doing a safe town meeting at a later date, there was strong support for that particular proposal. We were able to share that with members of the select board, and that's how the democratic process functions. So I appreciate that it does take time to plan these things, that there's a lot going on in town. Deep respect for the work that everyone is doing, but this was really the first chance to be able to weigh in. And I think there are folks in the community who have strong feelings, who are also very concerned about the health and safety of their neighbors and other folks in town, but feel that there is a pathway to doing a safe town meeting in person in the future, assuming that the pandemic improves in the way that many in the medical profession believe that it will by that date, or if it turns out that there is still a challenging situation, that we would be able to go and do some kind of Australian ballot. There also is not funding this year from the state, as there was last year, to mail everyone a ballot. So that would be a budget item that would not be incurred if we did a traditional town meeting for the town meeting itself. And happy to talk through details on utilizing the tents that the town already owns to be able to accommodate an outdoor town meeting, and where to secure tents if we needed additional coverage beyond what the town already has in its inventory. So those are just some responses to some of the comments that were made, and I really appreciate the select board considering the delay of town meeting to a later date and allowing us to have an in-person town meeting this year.
Thanks, Matt. Jim?
Thanks, Mary. I do agree with Phil. It's a hard decision, right? And I just want to make sure I understand the decision as well. But it sounds to me like you know, the direction was Australian ballot on March 1st. And I think the impetus for that was, you know, public safety issues as well as logistical issues for the town. You know, to go ahead with that March 1st date rather than delay. So I think the decision we're trying to make tonight is, do we stick to that plan or do we delay? All right. Now, the challenge I see is if we delay, we could very well be in the same position we are today 2 months later, right? Delaying does not guarantee that this thing can happen. If we delay and we still have to do Australian ballot, it hasn't helped the town, it's created a burden for the town. So that's the challenge that I have as I'm trying to sift through the information here and try to figure out what's the best strategy. You know, it's tough. So that's where my head is right now. I'm trying to sort it out, but you know, based on what I heard at the last meeting before I was in the select board, based on what I've heard from, you know, Dave and Brian tonight, it still seems like logistics and public safety are the two primary drivers here. So that's all I have to say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I see there are two hands raised from residents, and there's one on the phone, but I don't know who that person is. Can you identify yourself? 802-236, whatever, 9474.
This is Stacy Bradley. I had to join the meeting late and I couldn't get on through Zoom, so I'm having to join by my cell phone.
Thanks, Stacy. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I would just like to weigh in again that delaying town meeting, if that means that, I guess my question is if you're delaying the town meeting, does that mean you're also delaying the election of the, you know, elected officials, or whether that would be occurring in a split vote with the school board? But my understanding is that elections for officials would have to occur with town meeting. Is that correct?
Stacy, I understand that the warning for the town would include town elections and articles, you know, one and the same. It would be separate from a school vote.
Okay. So again, I'm going to say, you know, we have a lister that is running for re-election, and the beginning of May, even in April is not, you know, we limped along last year and brought somebody into the board of listers in May, and it's really a hassle, and it will not be any simpler this year, especially if, you know, for some reason, you know, something happens and the person doesn't retain their seat. It's going to put the board of listers in a really tight, horrible spot trying to figure out what to do 3 weeks before we're supposed to be lodging the grand list. So, you know, in May is not the time of year the listers want to be dealing with who's on the board and who isn't right in the midst of the work. It's really, that just really is not something we want to deal with. It really isn't. It really will create a stress, more added burden for the board of listers in a job that they're already, you know, have a lot to deal with, particularly this year. So it's, you know, I strongly recommend that you do not push out the town meeting, that you have it in March, so as not to create issues and problems. I mean, I heard Matt Dunn say that he, as well as the justices of peace, signed on. Yeah, they're elected officials, but an impact of 2 months delay is not that great for a justice of the peace as it is potentially for, you know, the school and its employees and its budget, or other departments in the town or the board of listers. It's a very different thing. So, you know, take it for what you will, but And as far as extra expense goes, if you're going to split out the vote and have to have a separate vote and a separate meeting time for the school board, a separate election on their school budget, you know, there's your extra expense right there for, you know, sending out Australian ballots, I would imagine, as well as the extra equipment you're going to need if you're going to decide to do a tent. And the town has tents, but I don't think the town has probably enough chairs. I don't think the town probably has all the equipment that it needs to be able to do that in the way it would need to be done. So I would say expense-wise, you're probably a wash between sending out Australian ballots to everyone versus trying to have two different, you know, election times, one for the school budget and one for town meeting. And I would also, I take a little bit of canceling town meeting. It's shifting how we're doing it. Yes, it's an informational meeting. We're still voting on all aspects. But to say canceling it is, you know, we're changing how we're having to do it. And I think, like Jim said, you have to look at what we know now, what we know today, and not count on what might happen in the future, as we don't know what that will be. Like it has been said, we could end up in the exact same position, no better off than we are now. So you go with what you know and what is definite and where we're at, and that's really what the decision should be based on. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. I'm gonna call on Rebecca next because I saw her hand, and then Pat Richardson. So Rebecca Genovese.
Hi, I wanna, I'm just sitting back also and listening, and people are speaking with a lot of conviction and a lot of emotion. And that's great. And I want to just put my emotional plea in that I'm in favor of us having the direct democracy that our town is set up to do, which requires feedback, not handed something, agree, or feel like a bad citizen. And that's kind of where we're at. I'm sorry. Informational meeting was in no way, shape, or form a two-way street last year. But on top of that, I want to, as an observer of the meeting, where some people are saying there was a whole lot of consensus 2 weeks ago. Boy, I left that experience as a townsperson observing and trying to contribute with anything but the feeling there was consensus. I felt like actually most of the volunteer select board that was elected to represent us was willing to move forward. I heard loud and clear, unfortunately, that the paid town officers really were very hesitant. There's a whole lot of people who went back to work over a year ago, make it work. And they're getting sick. But if you are basing this on emotions and you're picking a hypothetical, you know, 2 months, 4 months, 1 month, 3 months, whatever, I offered some real data, but it is out there. And we very closely mirror and did mirror from the beginning when there were no vaccines and we didn't know which masks were worth anything. And we didn't have any idea about airflow. And we thought anything was possible. That's where we were when we originally started doing it remotely. We're not there anymore. So in terms of expediency or public health, look around, people. Most of Hartland isn't wearing masks anymore. There's a lot of people for whom this is over. I'm blue in the face convincing my parents to keep taking it seriously. But be careful, you're not hiding, you know? I think pushing the decision and the date out might be the wisest thing. I hear all of that. I don't disagree or agree with anything what's been said, but I do think this decision should be made on something other than emotion. And I don't see how you're predicting when that is or when or how that is. I didn't see the consensus in the room that people are touting. That's my input there.
Thanks, Rebecca. Phil, can we just hear from Pat first? Because I said that she
I'm
was okay.
kind of feeling we're going around in circles, Mary. So I was wondering if, I'm not going to counter Rebecca, and I could very easily. But can we move to a vote? Or do you feel we have a need for more discussion?
If you want to call the vote, before we hear from Pat, you can do that, or let Pat speak. I don't think anybody else has raised their hand, so.
Okay, out of courtesy, please let Pat speak.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Pat, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Phil. This is, I think, minor, but in a response to Jim, seems to me delay is merely an option. To rule out delay seems to me the conservative option in this question. We certainly acknowledge the difficulties of changing a schedule and changing what's been planned. The meeting postings are at least 30 days, no more than 40 days. As Brian said, we could deal with that. We could, you could decide tonight not to do the school meeting on March 1 as planned and go along with all that the staff has proposed. You could also decide, I think, that you want to, maybe next month you could decide. You've got a 30-day notice period, no more than 40 days for a town meeting. The meeting we did last March did apparently work. It may not have been ideal, wasn't a deal. Nothing was ideal. And my last comment is, I think any of the expenses that we incur are compensatable probably by those great ARPA funds. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Pat. Phil, you'd like to call the meeting, the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we are done with discussion, and I'd like, Gordon, if you could read, because it was a while ago, if you could read your motion again, please.
Okay. I move that we delay town meeting for about 2 months in accordance with the legislation recently passed for that purpose.
Okay, and I believe Martha seconded that. So we'll call for a vote. I don't want to do this by consensus. I want everybody to weigh in their individual votes. So go ahead. Anybody want to take the lead?
Well, I can't. Let me lead because I made the motion.
Okay.
I will stick by the motion.
You're voting in favor of the motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Mary,
Yes.
I'm also voting in favor of the motion.
Thanks, Martha.
Phil, and I'm voting against the motion.
And Jim?
I'm going to vote against the motion with a suggestion that we, if we stick to March 1st, we do a much better job at the informational meeting in terms of gathering input.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. So I am delighted that there has to be, there's a tie, and
Mary.
am in the unfortunate position of having to cast a tiebreaker. I expected that this would happen, actually, so I am prepared. I want to remind everybody of our conversation at our last meeting, and it was my impression that we did reach consensus to hold town meeting on March 1st and with Australian ballot. And so I had to go back to the minutes, actually, Martha, and I read those and saw that, no, we didn't vote on it, but I thought we were in agreement and that we were just waiting to hear from the legislature to see if we could do it or not. So that's what I've been working on. And the other thing is that I want to remind everybody, the legislature voted on this just for this year, and that to do away with town meeting in its traditional format, the voters at town meeting, who all love town meeting, would have to vote against it. And I just don't think that is going to happen. So my vote is against the motion. And so the motion has failed. And I want to just say thank you to everybody for all your thoughtful input and perspectives. And it's been a really good exercise in democracy. So thank you. And if we're all set, I want to move on to our next agenda item, which is the town warning for the March 1st town meeting. So I'll need a motion, a second, and then we can talk about the warning. So Phil and Martha.
You need a motion to close or to open the new issue?
No, we're just going to the third issue.
I motion that we address the town meeting warning.
Okay. Anybody want to second that? Phil is seconding. Okay. And so let's have a discussion about the town warning.
Excuse me, Mary. I did not
Mhm.
understand what the motion was.
I think it was to pass the town meeting warning as presented.
To pass it as presented. Okay,
Is that okay with you, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have to pull up my my paper because I did have a couple of things. I want to look at. Here it is. Now then, meanwhile, while I find my comments, does anybody have anything they found issue with on the warning there? Dave reminded me that he did give it to the town lawyer to go over and to make sure everything's legal, and it is. So
So Mary, that was my question with the articles creating the, or dealing with the general fund surplus and creating reserves. So if those have been legally approved, then I'm comfortable with those.
okay, good. Dave, could you just confirm that? We haven't heard from you in a while, so I'd like to hear that you're still there.
No, I'm still here, Mary, thank you. So
Okay.
yes, so this, the town warning, and I've done this the last 3 or 4 years, did go to council, and it was reviewed, and he made a couple minor changes that have been inputted here. So, you know, at this point, legally, the way that the sequence and the wording, both of the top part of the warning and the body has been reviewed.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to say Article 11 should have a hyphen between litter and free. And Article 13, I think, would read better if it said aging in Hartland, and make it that a possessive, aging in Hartland, apostrophe S, aging in Hartland's Hartland Community Nurse Program.
Let me just, what was the first, where was the
Article 11 under Green Up Vermont. It should have a hyphen between litter and free, litter-free environment.
And the second one was what number?
13. And maybe people will disagree with me on this, but I think it's more, it's easier to understand if it's aging in Hartland, apostrophe S, take out that comma, aging in Hartland's Hartland Community Nurse Program.
Mary, should the in front of 18 in Hartland come out if you're doing that? To support 18 in Hartland's apostrophe?
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
Good. Yeah.
That's all I have. Well, I did have a question, Dave, about at the top where it says where we're meeting. How do you word that? At what?
So so that's the at time.
Okay.
Actually, unfortunately, and we may have lost Nikki Buck and Christine, but actually, as part of this, and actually as part of last agenda item, I think we can meld the two together. We need to have set a informational meeting time. So the date and time, so the blanks there are: an informational hearing will be conducted by electronic means on Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the day of the week.
Yeah.
The actual calendar date, and then at what time. So as part of this, or, and I'm sorry, we went from one to the other without me remembering, but we need to nail down an informational meeting time as well. So that's what goes in there.
Okay. So Dave and I spoke earlier about having the informational meeting the night before March 1st. So that would be February 28th. And, you know, we could hold it at our regular select board meeting time, or we could put it off an hour. Like we did the ARPA meeting was at 6:30. So any thoughts?
6:30 sounds good for people who are working.
Okay.
Do we know when the informational meeting for the school would be, or is this a joint informational meeting?
So this would be kind of set up as last year, as kind of a joint, but one goes before the other. And Nikki Buck does have her hand up, so she can, if you want some input from her, I believe she's got an opinion on this.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Nikki.
Hi there. We were actually pushing, in our mind, we're pushing for the 22nd, not the 28th. With the idea being that when we recorded the informational meeting last year, people that were not able to attend it live were able to watch it, and that gave them approximately a week to watch it before voting, which is important from our standpoint. So I think if the select board chooses to go on the 28th, we'll probably stick with the evening of the 22nd. But if you guys choose to go to the 22nd, then we'll do something joint with you where we would follow you like we did last year.
Okay, I think, what was it? The 21st is is President's Day, is that right, Dave? And then the 22nd is when we would normally hold our select board meeting on that Tuesday following a Monday holiday. So I think that's what we were thinking. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, that's right. The 7th is the first Monday and the 21st is the second.
Yeah. So if we were, yeah, it would, for clarity or to avoid any of the usual confusion when we move a meeting, we were thinking we should just keep it to Tuesday and not put it off to Wednesday or Thursday. So any other thoughts?
Nikki brought a good point up, and we heard it tonight with a number of folks saying they'd look back at the meeting or look back at the ARPA, the select board ARPA meetings. That maybe having that lag time after the meeting where people, if they chose, could actually go to the CATV site and look at the video. I think there's some synergy there with just getting the message out to more people.
Okay. Well, then I guess we could hold our select board meeting on the 21st, and then the informational meeting on the 22nd with them. We could do that. unless people are otherwise occupied on President's Day, I have no plans to go anywhere, so, you know, but that's just me.
I have no social plans for the next 2 months.
Let me consult my people, okay?
Martha, what do you think?
That would be all right with me. My question is, if the school information and the town information are on the same night, is that going to make for a very long meeting? Is that too much to do both at the same
I
time?
think it's a lot.
Well, didn't we do that last year, though?
But on a Saturday.
Oh, I see, I see.
It was long, but it was a Saturday. People, you know, it was in the morning on a Saturday.
Mhm.
Should
Gordon,
we
what do you think?
Should we? Well, I agree with everything I've heard, one way or another. What about doing it on Saturday, the 26th, and doing both meetings? And that would give,
The caution I'd throw out is that if anything goes wrong, right, technically or otherwise, you have an internet outage, you have no wiggle room to reschedule. You know, I wouldn't leave it too close to
well,
March 1st.
we still have Monday, which we were considering before. Yeah, that
Well,
might be a bit
the,
too cautious.
The school, Nikki was just saying that if it's on the 22nd, then that will give people several days, a number of days to watch it on CATV if they can't watch it on the 22nd, which I think is a good point, you know.
Then why don't we do, if we're going to do it a weekday, we let the school do it the 22nd, and we could do it either the following day or the day after.
I think that's
Okay.
reasonable.
Also on a
Yeah.
weekday.
Okay. Yeah. Martha, Phil, what do you think? Jim's in agreement.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Have it during our select board meeting on the 21st,
Do that.
and then the school on the 22nd.
Oh, that's an idea, but I don't know how much we have on the agenda for that meeting already. I don't know. Dave, do we have a full agenda already?
So we do have one topic of discussion that I expect to go probably past a half hour anyways, regarding some road work and some other stuff. So you may not want to do the two combined for that meeting. I think what you could probably do is if you want to have it on two separate nights, you can go ahead and still have the select board meeting on the 22nd, and then just have the informational meeting, you know, at some point during the week. I don't think you're going to want to try and do the informational meeting and a select board meeting, particularly with that one agenda item that we've got that particular night.
But the school meeting is locked in for the 22nd, right?
Yeah, it sounds like.
Wouldn't the select board attend that meeting or no?
If you want to, in the past, they have had their meeting, but we've been able to get through our select board meeting in time to visit theirs. Again, we have one particular topic that's going to be potentially lengthy that night, so I can't say for sure.
What time is the school meeting? I'm sorry.
I don't think they've given us a time. Nikki, did you guys have a time in mind?
We haven't scheduled it yet. We were kind of waiting for you guys. But if you were, I think if you were to do a normal select board meeting and then the informational meeting, that might go too late for us.
What time did you guys normally, before last year, when did you guys have, it's kind of a annual meeting / informational meeting. What time did that start?
I think it was at 7. I'm not positive.
I think that's right.
I'm comfortable with the idea of going the Wednesday, Thursday, so we don't collide. Give us a chance to have our a standalone select board meeting, and then attend the school meeting, and then, so we'd be meeting out that week, but it would give everyone a chance to have the standalone pieces. I think we tried a select board meeting and an open meeting. I think we'd be talking in tongues by the end of the night. It would be just too much.
Okay, so the 21st on President's Day for our select board meeting. Then the 22nd will be the school informational meeting. Then let's, because most of us go out and socialize on Thursday nights, I believe. That's a joke. Okay. So we could do, how about Wednesday night? We'll do 1, 2, 3. Boom. What do you think? Jim is nodding his head cautiously.
That sounds okay.
Okay, Martha, Gordon, and
Yes.
Phil. Okay. Yes. All right. So our informational meeting for town meeting will be Wednesday, the 23rd of February.
What do you want for a time, Mary? We need a time. Do you want to stick with 5:30?
Martha suggested 6:30 just to make sure everybody can get home, get some food, and then attend the meeting. So I'm fine with that. Gordon,
Yes, 6:30.
you're saying, okay. Jim saying yes, and there's a nod from Phil. Okay, thank you, Phil. All right, so 6:30 on Wednesday, the 23rd. That'll give them.
Hey, Nikki Buck, can you just get back to us tomorrow morning on a time for your meeting, just so that we can, or the informational meeting stuff, so we can put that in the flyer?
Yes, I will confirm that first thing. Well, I'll send it out tonight, but I'll give you information as soon as I get it.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nikki. So I don't think we didn't act on this town meeting warning yet, right? We, Jim
Right.
made the motion. Martha, did you second it? Or did anyone second it?
I think Phil did.
Phil did, okay. So we've just discussed it. Does anybody else want to weigh in on the warning?
I did have a question
Go ahead.
for Dave. Mailing out ballots. What did you have in mind? Whole town, everybody gets a ballot, or do they request, or what's the story?
So that's a question for Brian, but my understanding in talking with Brian, it would be mailing it out to registered voters.
Yeah.
Without their-
One other question is about the farmer's market. Once, I don't know if Brian's still with us here. Once we move the market to Windsor, is it still a Hartland Farmers Market? Do we still want to fund it? That was my question.
I see, Brian wants to speak. Go ahead, Brian.
Statutorily, the select board needs to make the decision to mail ballots to all registered voters. I cannot make that decision. So if we want to mail ballots, the select board will need to make a motion and pass that. Otherwise, it would be absentee request. So it would be an Australian ballot, and similar to general or midterms, voters could request an absentee ballot, or they can vote in person. But in order to mail ballots to all active voters, the select board will need to pass a motion.
Okay, could you just, so right now we're still talking about the warning, Brian. So Gordon had asked about the farmer's market, which is on the morning. Can you speak to that?
I would like to abstain, given that I am an elected official. Yes, I also manage the farmer's market. I don't know if there's anybody else on the call that would like to speak to that, but I do not feel comfortable addressing that question.
All right, so I don't think we'll get an answer.
Brian, if I found the email with that has the answer in it, I think what your plan was. But I don't know.
It's not, I'll just say it's not my plan, it's the board's plan.
Board's plan, yes.
I am the manager of the farmer's market, but we do have an elected board that ultimately made the decisions. It does look like in the chat box that Anna Mejia would be willing to speak to Gordon's question. She is a board member.
Does have her hand up as well.
Great, go ahead, Anna.
We're getting there, Mary. No. This one right here. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So I believe Gordon's question was whether the Hartland Farmers Market is still a Hartland's Farmers Market if it's in Windsor. Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes, it is still a Hartland Farmers Market. And we're still going to have some activities in Hartland as well. As you know, we also oversee the Hartland Community Oven, and we will continue to host events there. And I will also add that there's a lot of our vendors who are Hartland residents who will be vending at the new location. And I imagine that there will be also a lot of Hartland residents who will be supporting the market at the new location. I'll add also that there is many other articles on the warning that are not specifically Hartland organizations, or don't just narrow their services to only Hartland residents, or don't only have a physical location in Hartland. So that seems a little bit, would not be consistent with how town meetings or articles are decided whether they're going to be placed or not placed on the warning. So that's my 2 cents. I would be really disappointed to see if the board decided to remove that from the warning based on the flawed rationale that we are no longer in Hartland and so no longer serving this population.
So Anna, I would like to say that I think you should go to law school. The second thing is that I do remember that when this was first put before voters, it was to fund, I thought if memory serves, it was to fund the community oven. So I'm just wondering, now that that has been well and truly funded and built, how these funds are used.
I believe the exact language is on, I'm not seeing the proposed town warning in front of me. I know I helped draft it, but the idea was that we would use some of the funds from the town appropriations to help provide scholarships to vendors who find it difficult or see that as a barrier in order to participate in the market. We are also open to thinking about other ways that would directly benefit our community. But yes, the oven has already been funded. That was, I think, an article 2 years back. The most recent one from last year was using the money for Pop Club, the Power of Produce, where children are given pop bucks after completing some activities. That's money that they can spend in the market. And also to fund the coordination of that program.
Okay, it does, the article does say the farmers market offers a children's program where kids ages 5 to 12 learn about and eat fresh foods and receive market pop bucks to spend on produce. All right, thank you for answering that question.
Mary,
Yeah,
should we answer Brian's question about the mail out ballots at this time?
well, we can, but I would like, I feel that the discussion, the motion on before us right now is about the warning. So if we can finish that discussion and take a vote, and then somebody can make a motion to put that forward.
Okay.
Mary, there's a question in the chat.
Mhm.
If the warning is available to the general public right now. I don't know if it was in the general mailing that Dave put out with the agenda.
I don't know either.
And I don't know if there's a separate link.
The warning was in the agenda packet.
But not to everybody. I think everybody gets the agenda. I don't know, does everybody get?
Well, it was in our packet.
No, Jim, I'm meaning there was a separate mailing out to the general public.
Oh, no, yeah, I didn't see it there.
Yeah. And Mary, there's also a question that we seem to have made the vote to not have to delay the town meeting, but do we need a vote to actually declare the town meeting is going to be on a certain day, on March 1st?
Well, it wouldn't hurt to just make that out of an abundance of caution. But I still want to get through this motion.
Yes. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm just.
So Mary, if I can just add some constructive conversation here to the actual motion. So I have a question to the select board on the warning. Article 4 basically states, so the voters establish a reserve fund to be called the Box Culvert Reserve Fund. Having said that, I would put it towards, I just think it makes for a wider use, just in case, if it would be okay to make that the Culvert Reserve Fund, or whether you want to keep it the Box Culvert Reserve Fund.
So that it could be used for other kinds of culverts, is that what you're thinking?
Just in case, we have some other fairly large culverts out there that just don't happen to be a box culvert. And so I would change the wording to call the Culvert Reserve Fund for the purpose of maintaining, upgrading, and upsizing the town's culverts. And therefore, box culvert would also fall under that. It was intended for box culverts, but, I throw it out there as a question. It was just kind of after I wrote it and, picked it up a couple days later. Question for you guys.
That's a good idea. Did you have something else too?
That's the only thing I've got. Everything else, the blanks and everything I'm okay with. I just pose that to the board. I think it might be ultimately a stronger reserve fund, but I'll listen to feedback. Along with, and Mary, I don't have any issues with the other two changes that you've recommended on Article 11 or Article 13. I'm okay with either one of those, or both of them.
Okay, thank you. So I have lost track of who made the motion and who seconded it, but I would like it to be restated with the additional words of with changes presented or something to that effect.
I have that Jim made the motion to pass the warning as presented, seconded by Phil.
I'll make the motion to pass the warning with changes as discussed to 11:13 in the box culvert article.
Okay, great. Bill?
I'm
Bill
okay.
seconds. All right, thank you. We've had extensive discussion. I think we're ready to have a vote, and I'd like,
Mary,
yeah,
are you taking any comment from the public on this?
sure, go ahead.
I just want to point out, especially in the discussion of whether we do this by Australian ballot or in a forum where you're discussing, no one in the public has seen the warning that you are voting on to be able to make a comment or a suggestion or raise a concern like the one that Gordon raised. And I would think you would want to make sure that it is actually public before it's been voted on. I just want to flag that on a process basis, or even having a link for those who are present to be able to see the articles that are before you, which are going to be the only option that folks have, whether to vote up or vote down.
I don't know that I'm able to send you that link. Maybe Dave is, but
Yeah, I'm not, but I'm not aware of that being a prerequisite to the select board,
David, I'm not,
to the passing
I'm
its
not
own warrant.
suggesting,
Well, you
I'm
kind
not
of
suggesting
did.
that it's a legal process. I'm just saying there's a number of people in the chat who haven't seen it, and that there's, it's not, in terms of process, it's, I think, challenging on the transparency front.
Well, that's, you're always welcome to your opinion, Matt.
Thank you.
Matt, Matt, I traditionally, we have never put this out to the public that I know of. Have not had that concern.
Although it's usually available, when I've attended select board meetings, when it's been discussed, it's usually available on location. But that's just my experience from before. So there was an opportunity to at least review it at the time.
It is certainly a different time because in discussions with some of my neighbors about the votes tonight, a lot of folks didn't understand, at the power of the town meeting of being able to amend an article from the floor and have a more rich discussion at the meeting. So we don't have that that opportunity. And I don't know if, I don't know the schedule with this, if we delay for 2 weeks.
We need this, Bill, we need it basically for like Wednesday.
Okay, well, then it's up to the informational meeting and we don't amend anything, but we can have discussions at that point.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So I'd like to call for a vote. So Jim made the motion to pass the town meeting warning as amended or as presented with changes, however you said it, and Phil seconded.
Phil, yes.
Ahead. Phil, yes.
Martha, yes.
Martha?
Yeah, Gordon, yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And Mary says yes. Motion passed. Thanks, everybody. Let me just call up my agenda. You know what? It's been 2 hours. I would like to stand up and just move around and reconvene in or come back to the table in 2 minutes. How about that? Is everybody okay with that?
Seconded.
What did you say?
I second the motion.
Okay. I wasn't actually a motion, Jim. It's a declaration. All right. See you shortly. Thank you.
She wanted it. John Sanders put out an email to Hartford. I think it was to Hartford. Yeah, I sent it this email. I wasn't aware of it. It's kind of tough for me to answer why they're communicating with Keith is right beyond me. But, because he's assuming ownership of it. It was Sunday night. Yeah. contract. Patty's actually getting dressed to go over to open gate for Keith beat me to it. The ambulance beat him to it. So the ambulance did open the gate, they did. But they were the duty crucial was fully aware there's a gate there. They may not have known that as we got close enough because at that moment in time it was open. But they are aware. And their duty shift. Go down through there, so they're traveling through. Well, I think to say that was probably the only thing that, you know, but at that point, I was like, I don't know what to tell you, Keith, this is what's being conveyed to me. Everything else is kind of nitpick. You know, so if he's made an independent agreement with Twin State, well, good for him. My agreement, my understanding was that, residents needed to work through Twin State. At best, they were gonna allow septic and oil trucks. I didn't hear an affirmative on trash trucks or his stuff. If he's made an agreement with Twin State, power to him, but that's not what I got in writing. Who's you talking to? And his dad, actually, his dad was the one. So, and I think they may have warned, as Mary said, they may have warmed up a little bit. When I talked to them, they really didn't even want oil trucks. It was kind of like, it was like, you know what? Once a year, we heard from a septic truck.
Dave, we got a hot mic. Hot mic.
Can you hear me? I'm talking about my late night plans. No, we're talking about the Mill Street gate there, and whether what Twin State is communicated to Mr. Avery and et cetera. So.
I just wanted you to know that we could hear you, so.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know what I've done here.
I'm just waiting for Phil and Jim.
Okay.
Okay, there's Phil.
Okay.
Okay, we're all back. And so the fourth item of old business is David Cowdrey's certificate of approved location of salvage yard.
Mary,
So, yeah.
excuse me, did we need to make a motion about the mail-in
Oh,
ballot?
yeah, that's right, those two. Okay, yes, thanks a lot, Martha. All right, so we need a motion to approve mailing ballots to all registered voters in advance of the March 1st, 2022 town meeting.
Mary, can I make
Yes.
the motion?
Please.
I move that we mail absentee ballots to those who request them only, and not mail ballots to everyone.
Gordon, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, let's have a
Well,
second first,
okay,
and then
yeah,
we'll.
okay.
You want
Yeah,
to?
we can do.
You want to second that, Phil?
No.
No. Anybody else? Okay, nobody.
Well, I
Nobody
can go
wants.
for
No, it didn't. So, okay, if nobody seconds this, Gordon's motion will fail for lack of a second. So I'm just putting that out there so people make sure everybody knows. Okay, Gordon, I believe your motion has failed for lack of a second.
Yeah, so be it.
Sorry, Gordon.
Very gracious, Gordon. Does anyone else want to propose a different motion?
I'll motion that we, are we reacting to Brian's request? Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, we
Okay,
are.
then I motion that we accept Brian's request to send mail-in ballots only to registered voters in Hartland.
Okay, could you add the occasion for these ballots?
For the town meeting on March 1st.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to second that motion? Bill, you're seconding that motion. Let's have a discussion. Gordon, do you want to express an opinion about that?
Well, my original thought was that we were sending a lot of ballots to a lot of people who are going to throw them in the wastebasket. And I know that we did have pretty good response last year. And I think that's probably what Phil and Jim are hanging their hat on here, that if they get the ballots, they're more apt to vote. And so that would be a positive. I don't know.
I think you're right. I think, half of them will not get returned, but the other half will.
And there's just confusion over this whole ball of wax that we've been talking about tonight. So I think anything that we can do to engage the voters. And I think one thing we can do is that direct mailing to the registered voters.
Okay, any more discussion?
Mary, there's some hands up. I don't know if they're
Oh.
relevant to this discussion or.
Okay, let me see. Let's see, Matt and Anna. So Matt, is your hand up for this discussion?
Matt is still muted.
Hold on, technical difficulties.
Now that she fixed it,
Want me to give it a try? There you go. You got it up, right, up one more. Right there. You just gotta click, left click there. There you go.
some reason,
What's that?
some reason it's not working.
You try the lower part of the keypad, the lower part of that box.
What's that?
Try. Try right. Try the next one down, try Anna.
This is where we learn to practice patience, right?
I'm sorry, I'm tuning into the Heartland Library meeting and I missed, but I saw that I'm being asked to unmute.
Your hand was up, Anna. If you don't have a question, we can put your hand down and move
So
on.
sorry, apologies.
That's
I
okay.
don't have a question.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like Matt's hand is down. Matt,
Yeah.
if you still have a question, feel free to put your hand back up.
He might have gotten disheartened. Okay, so let's go for a vote. The motion before us is about mailing out ballots. All in favor, please say aye.
Bill, I.
Aye.
I just abstain.
Okay. Are you abstaining, Jim? Or are you saying?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Yep.
I say aye. So the motion carried. Thank you. And then there was another motion that we need to make, I guess.
Confirm that it's, confirm, and it actually says on the warning, March 1st, 2022, but just confirm that indeed, March 1st, 2022, polls are going to be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Is that enough of the motion that's needed? I thought somebody said we needed to make a motion that we were holding it virtually. Or I don't really know.
Mary, so you're holding it Australian ballot. You've already decided that. You've decided to hold your informational meeting. I suppose if you want to confirm that that's going to be remote, you can confirm that.
Okay.
I thought the question was whether you're going to have town meeting on the 1st or not. The warning basically states the 1st from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So by accepting, yeah, so that's already on the warning.
All right, so then we just need a motion. But we already did this, didn't we? That we're going to have the informational meeting on the 23rd?
I think, yeah, that was that's part of the town meeting warning vote, I believe.
All right, well, I'm looking for a motion, just like I said before.
Or can we get a clarification, Dave? What do you feel we need to make a motion on?
I didn't feel anything. I think it went back to one of the questions. I thought the question was whether we had specified it was going to be on town meeting day, March 1st. The warning specifies that.
We adopted the warning.
You've already made a motion about the 23rd. I suppose if you want to clarify that that will be held remotely, then you can clarify that. Otherwise, I'm not sure if you need to clarify anything else. I'm not aware that you.
In the chat.
But the informational meeting is part of the warning that we adopted, right?
Correct.
Yes.
I think we're done there unless somebody thinks there's a gap.
Okay, great. If it turns out that there is, I suppose at our next meeting, we could make a motion. So let's move on to the number 4 piece of old business, which is David Cowdrey, certification of approved location of a salvage yard. We need a motion on that. Dave, maybe you could just remind us about this issue. The state is looking for the town to sign off on a certification of approved location of a salvage yard, but to do that, we would have had to have seen a site plan, and Mr. Cowdrey declined that opportunity. So we are kind of have to just deny this certification because he didn't get that site plan into us.
So, correct, ultimately you needed, you made a decision, and as part of a condition of the decision, he needed to submit a revised site plan. And it needed to be submitted by December 12th, 2022, or he hadn't abided by his conditions.
21.
I'm sorry, 21, thank you.
Yep.
Out of the courtesy, I gave him a call and reminded him and gave him until January 12th. And again, this is in conjunction with conversation with council. Gave him till January 12th at 4 p.m. to submit the site plan. He did not. On top of that, on January 10th, 2 days before, he called me and said that he was really not interested in pursuing this, that he was going to pursue a dealer license. He was going to try and go that route. So you need to ultimately, you know, he needed to have abided by the conditions for an approval, of which he is not, and therefore you need to give him a denial, of which this is. And I would need you guys to come in and sign it as well. So the motion, and then once you pass this, you would need to come in and sign it.
So we would need a motion to deny the certification of approved location of a salvage yard for David Cowdrey on whatever that location is.
Correct, 155, I'm sorry, 559 Vermont Route 12.
I can try to take a stab at it, Mary.
Okay, great.
I'll make a motion that we deny the application for the certificate of approved location of a salvage yard for the property at 559 Vermont Route 12, owned by period. The application was submitted by Mr. David Cowdrey, and the requested documents from the select board to Mr. Cowdrey were not delivered by the dates mentioned in the letter dated January 18th, 2022.
Okay, I think it was a single document though.
A certificate of approved location.
The site plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Martha, can you make that singular? The worthy motion, but
I think I've got the gist of it.
Thank you.
So we need a second, then we can discuss it if need be.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Gordon seconds. Is there any discussion, any questions for Dave about this?
And I think we tried pretty hard to create a set of conditions on the town's part that would allow Mr. Cowdrey to go forward. We tried.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so anyone else? All right, then let's, I'd like to call for the vote. All in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye.
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 Jim, did you?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And I say aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. We've got one more thing under old business. Do we? Yes. So fifth item is the fiscal year 22 budget update, which will be led, that discussion will be led by our esteemed town manager, David Ormiston.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary.
You're
Since we've gone remote, it's a little bit difficult for Martin to do it, so I'll pick it up here. So I'll try and be brief. In a nutshell, the budget looks pretty good. The recreation center is lagging a bit on its revenues, but we still have not yet received the $25,000 from the school for the athletic director reimbursement. So even if we got half of that or included half of that into the budget, because this is through the end of December 31st, so this is a 6-month budget for, we're 6 months through the budget, so it's 50%. So if we were to even include half of that 25,000, it would bring us in line with basically where we are with expenses for the rec center, which is below projections as well, but I think that COVID-19 has a fair amount to do with that. So again, overall, to come to expenses for the general fund, what we like to do, particularly since we're only 50% of the way through, since we have paid most of the appropriations and we have paid most of the assessments, which is a lot of the one-time things like the Greater Upper Valley Solid Waste District or some loans. If we take that out, it gives us a little bit truer picture of where we are operationally. And if we take the assessment expenses and the appropriations out, at the moment we are running at about 44% expensed, which is below the 50%, which is a good thing for us. I will point out what is helping us here is under health, under page 1 of 10, under the general fund expenses. About a quarter of the way down through the administration, under health insurance, we're only about 27% expensed. We had included health insurance for our new employee, Sean McGranigan. He has got another arrangement, so at the moment we're over budgeted on health insurance. Back when we put this budget together, we weren't sure whether this employee was going to need, it's a new employee position, whether they were going to need insurance or not. So the fact that this employee is not taking insurance at the moment is beneficial to the budget. And also under the legal expenses, which is a little bit farther down, we're about 43% expensed. We got a little bit of room there. So that is helping us on the expense side of the general fund. And if this trend continues, as you know from Martin's updates, the $9,000 expense for the North Hartland playground, Courier Park, around the basketball court is still in the budget. And at the moment, it looks as though, we have room to carry that without having to transfer money out of the reserve fund, so that's positive. Everything else looks pretty good as far as general fund expenses. On the highway fund side, things look really good, with an exception of we haven't done any paving yet. We plan to do paving in May because Pike couldn't get to us due to a backlog late summer and fall. So that really makes the budget look pretty darn good. But if for conversation's sake we were to factor in the $170,000 or even take it out, again, to give us an indication of how the budget looks without that $170,000 expense, we're at about 44% expensed on the highway side. So that is, we're looking pretty good. Again, we do hope to get to the paving come May. Two things to add here is we do have expenses under the bridge component under town bridges of the highway budget. That is for the Mill Street Bridge, so that was $22,500. That was kind of an unexpected expense. However, we do have grant revenue that will go against that as soon as we submit for reimbursement. May not take, we may not get all $22,500 back, but we'll get a chunk of that back, which will help the highway fund. The one other thing that's kind of a little bit of a flag, but we've made some purchases early due to kind of supply and demand problems. Under total equipment, it's a little deceiving because we have 155,000 or close to that as kind of a transfer out to the equipment fund. So when you look at that, it's like, hey, we're only 28, 29% expense. Right now I'm on page 2 of 3 of the highway fund expenses. However, we're anticipating making that transfer to the equipment fund. And if we were to consider that, it leaves us with about 56, 57% expensed under equipment, which is a little bit of a red flag. Means that we're over expensed on equipment and maintenance so far. Again, this is on highway equipment. However, we have made some early expenses, particularly on tire chains and some other things that due to supply and demand, we decided to purchase early. So hopefully that kind of evens out as we go into the spring. Any questions on the budget?
Yeah, Dave, I've got a question on the highway fund expenses on page 1 of 3. Under equipment use, we didn't budget anything, and then we've got 7,800. Was that just accounting change or?
Let me think here. So this is under summer maintenance. I'd have to double check on that, Mary, as to what that went to. I can't remember off the top of my head what we expensed there.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
I can get back to you tomorrow via email on that.
Okay.
Dave, I have a couple of questions also, and forgive me if these are remedial questions. But on the health insurance, my observation there is that you've spent only about half of what you thought you would so far this year. So I just question whether that's really a single employee, or could we have missed a payment, or?
It's always possible we're behind a payment, but with health insurance, we tend to prepay a month. But I do believe that
26% halfway through the year is really only about half of your overall cost for that time period.
Right, Jim, but so when we plan for a new employee, we plan for the max, which is a family plan, which runs about 25 grand. So, it's not going to bring it up to 50, but, that's a whole nother 12.5%, 12,500. So it brings it up, a bit.
I also noticed it looks like the library is under by a similar amount. Just kind of the numbers just kind of, make the math feel a little bit funny.
And the library had some unexpected grants this year. So I think last time when Martin was explaining that was the difference.
But would that wouldn't go to a payroll expense, would it?
No, I don't believe so.
So Jim, what's your specific question on the library? I'm sorry.
I'm gonna find I'm going through the numbers here. I'm trying to find, I got my glasses back on. That's what's slowing me down. Sorry. But there was a line item on the library as well, I thought, where their health insurance budget was under.
So Jim, I don't scrutinize the library quite as close because they're kind of under a separate board. But I can touch base with Nancy as to whether one of them got bumped down. Again, you got to remember that we put the budget together, almost a couple months before people had the opportunity to kind of switch plans. I know that there was one person that may have gone from a family to a two-person or
Okay.
a husband, wife to a, I think they dropped a daughter, so I think that may play a part of it.
It just sounded odd to me that both of the, both for the town and the library, the health insurance was significantly under. So I was just, I'm not trying to tell you to spend more money. I was just concerned that maybe a payment got missed.
Okay.
And I guess the other one that I had circled here was the North Hartland School is 300% of the budget. So that just caught my eye as well.
Oh, so $9,000 line item there, Jim, is kind of what I alluded to as far as, so we did some work to the basketball court.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So there's a $9,000 expense item that we have money to come over from a reserve account. However, if we are under budget, for instance, if the health insurance costs come in less, and I should also point out that there was an actual decrease in health insurance for the last 6 months of this year from last year, and we tend to budget a 10% increase.
Right.
So that may be factoring in here, Jim. But so if we can come in under budget, the plan is to not make that transfer from the reserve account to the general fund and save that reserve money for a future project.
Thank you.
Jim, I think it's good to remember that it's been about 14 months since we formulated this budget.
I'm not on budget either.
So, I mean, it can be difficult.
Yeah. No, those are just two numbers that stood out to me. So thank you for explaining that.
Dave, do you have something else?
Go ahead.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Dave? No? Okay. So, all right, Dave, we're done with that then, the budget update?
We are, yes.
Okay. So the next thing would be number 5, new business, and there's only one item, and that's about Hartland's common level of appraisal, the CLA, and the coefficient of dispersion, the COD.
So this is, it can be kind of confusing, but I'll try and make it as simple as possible. So this is your equalization study results, and this is important. This is your assessed property or the town's assessed values. And the CLA basically tells you whether the town is over-assessed or under-assessed. And if the CLA was 1.0, it would mean that we're essentially assessed perfectly. So there's a couple red flags on this equalization study. The first one is that the CLA is 90.24, which means we're about 10% under-assessed. I'll note that both on the CLA, if you hit 85% or 1.15%, it triggers a reappraisal from the state of Vermont. Now, I actually present the equalization study to you every year. It's usually tucked under the town manager's notes. This one was just a little bit more important this year, so I pulled it out and gave it an agenda item. Simply because I want to highlight these numbers, and I'm highlighting them, but I certainly don't want to, for instance, scare you in any kind of a way, because it's perfectly understandable as to what's going on here is if anybody has followed property values in the state of Vermont over the past 2 to 3 years with the pandemic, property values have increased tremendously, and we did our reappraisal about 2.5 years ago. So with these new sales occurring, particularly on the high end homes and land, we're seeing that the town's values of assessed values of these properties is underassessed. So since the state of Vermont truly is a statewide property tax, the reason for the equalization is to ensure that everybody pays essentially an equal tax kind of across the state. So the state kind of does their own tax study, or I'm sorry, sales study of sales in Vermont. And they look at their sales compared to the town of Hartland. And they say, hey, Hartland, your assessed values are running about 10% below statewide sales. Now, this is somewhat meaningful other than the fact that it could trigger a reappraisal down the road, is from a property tax perspective, when the lands are underassessed, the state essentially will, on the school tax side of your bill, will make up the difference. So they will tax you at a greater level than what if we were at 1, to make up for the fact that the town is underassessed. So the state wants to ensure that they get their money, so the town can't just, willfully unassess or underassess, or even if they have the best intentions. The state does a statewide study, and if the town is underappraised, then they will make up for that in the state tax rate that comes to us in basically June and July, once they've figured out all the budgets across the state of Vermont and the assessed values of the property. The coefficient of dispersion is how good, or I shouldn't say how good, but let's just take an average of and within an average, you're going to have some numbers that are above the average and some numbers that are below the average. In the coefficient of dispersion, the lower that number, we have an 18.89. The lower the number means that the tighter those numbers are around the average. The larger the number, and ours is actually getting to be large at 18.89%, means that those numbers above and below the average are fairly scattered. So what that means is that in the town of Hartland, you have got a good number of residents that are paying more than their fair share, essentially overassessed, and you have a good number of residents that are underappraised or not paying their fair share. A COD of 20 kicks off a reappraisal, and we're at 18.89. We're getting close to that. I'll just state, hopefully this is the soothing part. This really doesn't surprise Stacy or myself, and Cheyenne is on, Alistair is on the call here. It doesn't really surprise us. We knew that property values are going up. And shortly after our reappraisal, we also knew that the COD, we had some issues there. Hartland has a good spread of values. It has some very high-end values. It has some very kind of low-end values. Very difficult kind of a mix to assess. Going forward, there is a plan. As you know, we plan on assessing the hydro dams, and Stacy has sent me a proposal on that. And then after that, we do plan on another reassessment. Again, we're about 2 years away. And that would fall into a natural, about a 5-year cycle of doing reappraisals. And we can't really get anybody to do it. It's about a 2-year waiting list to have a company come in and do a reappraisal with you. So we're running about what's available or what may be available for somebody to respond to an RFP and come in to do a reappraisal anyways. So, you know, if one triggers, we do have a plan. But I did want to just kind of discuss these numbers and let you know where we're at, kind of close to the extremes, especially on the COD. However, you know, again, we are certainly not the only town experiencing the change in values here. That's it. I'll open that up to any questions. Or if Cheyenne has something she wants to add, I'll let her add that as well.
Looks like both Stacy and Cheyenne have their hands up.
I'm sorry, Stacy is on the phone. I forgot she was actually on the phone. That's her phone number. So both of them are available. I'm sorry, Stacy, I forgot about your phone there. And we're working on making you available.
This is Stacy, if anybody has any questions.
Well, I have a question. Stacy,
Yes.
do you plan to appeal these numbers? I know we have in the past.
I don't believe we do intend to appeal these numbers at this point in time, simply because based on the sales that we're seeing come in, I mean, these are the sales we're seeing come in town. You know, it's as Dave alluded, this is not anything, you know, this is not exclusive to Hartland. Hartford's CLA, for instance, is 86.76. You know, Norwich is 84.39, so they've been triggered a reappraisal. West Windsor is 88.95. Windsor is 92.39. Woodstock is down to 81.17. So we are right in the same ballpark as all the communities around us. The only one that's really kind of up there is sort of Norwich and Pomfret, but everybody else is really hitting down in the low 90s and mid to upper 80s around us. So I don't really think it probably would do us, it would be beneficial. Yeah. It's just, we're seeing the prices, you know, they jumped in the last year and a half. We're seeing the sales coming in at 20-30% above assessed value. The market is, yes, it's partly being driven by COVID, but it's also due to the fact that there just are not enough new houses being built to keep up with demand. You know, and it's just where the market is right now, unfortunately.
So I have a question. This is Mary, Stacy. Who puts this out to RFP? Is it you or Dave? And has that been done yet?
We have not put an RFP out on the reappraisal yet, mostly because we wanted to get through getting going and with the hydro electric facility reappraisal. And, you know, the very earliest, you know, I would expect we'll be looking at that probably later this summer once we get towards June or July, be looking at beginning to put together an RFP on that. And I'm not certain exactly. I think it would be the listers, you know, but I certainly will be working with Dave on that.
And do you have an appraisal? Were you able to find somebody to appraise the hydro dams?
Ask that question again, I'm sorry.
were you able to find somebody to appraise the hydro dams?
We received 2 proposals that we have. So yes.
Oh, good, good. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions?
I don't think so. Everybody's content, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
you. Thank you, Stacy, very much. Dave, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about those figures?
No, that's about as much as I want to get into COD and CLAs.
Okay. And if no one else has any questions or comments about those, we can move to number 6, the manager's update.
So, yes. So COVID, we are now remote. I think that kind of speaks for itself. Three Corners intersection that has made it through state review. So we are awaiting, so our engineer needs to respond to some of their comments. Again, this is like the 3rd time we've been through this. However, this is with final design, so this is a good thing. It didn't seem to be a drastic amount of comments from the state of Vermont. Last I knew from Rita Cito, who has been project manager on this, and the representative from V-Trans, is that we're still hoping for a late February, March bid on this. And we're also having discussions now. We still need to bid on a site or a construction engineer for the project. So we are moving forward as if this is going to go out this spring. Just want to mention, with all the stuff going on with ARPA and all that excitement, this does take quite a bit of focus from everybody involved to kind of make sure that the details are intact and we move this forward. We do have a bond offering in February. There's some paperwork to finish up with that. So there, my message to the select board is simply to stay focused on those projects that we do have in the pipeline to kind of coincide with the excitement of future possibilities. So I just made it just felt as though there was a need to bring that forward. Finance office, remember tax bills are due February 11th. That's coming up. We have the town report and mailer that the mailer needs to get to the printer this Friday. Michelle is working diligently on that. We'd just like to mention Jenna Wheeler, our assistant rec director, has given birth to a baby boy. Everybody is healthy and happy, and she will be away for several weeks during this process. And unfortunately, we did hear, not unfortunately, we heard from her, but unfortunately that Anna is leaving the clerk's office. As I mentioned in my update, this is unfortunately not new news. I certainly didn't mean to leave it out previously. I meant to put it in my last town manager update. She's going to work at Sevco, which is kind of right up her alley. We're going to miss her tremendously. She was an excellent employee, and we all at the offices wish her well. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And I think the select board will echo your good wishes to Anna. Phil, did you want to say something?
Yes, Dave, I was wondering when we as a select board and the general public might see the notes from our townwide meeting on ARPA.
The next meeting, the next ARPA meeting. I don't do I don't think they're not super organized, but, you know, if you feel as though they should be put out, I suppose we can do that.
Well,
I included those notes in the minutes from the last Thursday's meeting. Sarah made that document available.
Okay.
So I could send that to you if you just want to look at it.
I would love to see, just to refresh my memory.
Yeah, could you send that to all of us, Martha?
Yeah,
please?
I will send it to all of you.
Thank you.
So her next steps were, I guess we can stick this under part of the town manager's update, but her next steps were to kind of marry that list with some of the criteria, you know, important criteria for a project, and kind of start to formulate a list of, you know, taking those items and then again, based upon the criteria that people found to be most important, kind of start to list those projects that might fit into those most important criteria, and kind of will start to enable some priorities there.
Okay, anybody else? I want to get on to number 7, which is correspondence, and acknowledge that we have received the letter about town meeting from Matt Dunn and Pat Richardson. And then also, I think, Dave, you had something about correspondence, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted, and these correspondence are best served for the ARPA meeting, but certainly, I don't, they came in too late to put in your packet as well, but they're really ARPA orientated. I got some communication from Remy Strawbridge and his neighbor, the Daniels, regarding their situation with
broadband.
And then there was a communication regarding the thought process of I want to say gazebo, but pavilion. This particular comment was that they prefer, they feel as though that's a nice field and that the pavilion would not fit with the scenic value of the field. I don't have the name off the top of my head for that, but those 3 came in. I didn't want these people to think that they didn't go to the select board, but I think that they will be a part of the ARPA meeting, and additional comments that we've received. We have the email set up, and people can still email that email or to me additional comments, and these will be put forth as additional comments during that next meeting.
And the next meeting, ARPA meeting, is the 27th, is that right? Thursday at 6:30?
Correct.
Okay. So our last item on the agenda is future agenda items. And I do want to add one, Dave, and that is that the cemetery committee is going to come up with a plan for the town in terms of like what I'm guessing that this is what's needed anyway, and what cemeteries are active, which are inactive. And I think at this point, all of the cemeteries are inactive except for the village cemetery at the brick church. And the reason this has come to my attention is that a former resident contacted me and said she and her husband would like their ashes buried in Hartland, and is there room in one of the cemeteries on Weed Road, and the cemetery committee does not know. So this has been a problem for a long time. There are other people also who would like to be buried, but we don't know if there is space in these cemeteries or if they're definitely closed. I think we may need to hire somebody to do the research, because there doesn't seem to be anybody who knows this, and there is demand. So I would like that on a future agenda, maybe, I don't know, could be after town meeting. This woman assured me that she was in good health and not planning on dying anytime soon, but she would like an answer.
I think, Dan, there have been some discussion and maybe even some preliminary work, and there may be some info with the Historical Society more than we're aware of, but there have been some talk before the committee, I won't say disbanded, but you know, kind of fell apart. That had been part of the discussion.
Yeah.
So just revisiting that with Dan, I can't remember his last name, but Dan
Moranci,
thank you very much. Just as to where they were at, and then picking up that and going forward would probably be ideal, but it's a question mark. I think all those people that were a part of that committee, I think, had at some point. So I'm concurring with you, I guess.
okay. I think it's an important topic and one that deserves our attention and follow through. And you're right, the Historical Society, they might have some answers for us, but it's never, to my knowledge, been consolidated and placed somewhere where it's public and, you know, we have the answers readily at hand. So, okay, I think we've exhausted ourselves, but this has been a really fruitful meeting, and appreciate everybody's participation. So would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? No
Sure.
one wants to adjourn? Okay, all right.
Your turn, Martha.
Martha's on mute. Okay.
I am not muted now. I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting, and I want to commend Mary for so capably leading us through all of these agenda items.
Well, thanks, Martha.
Second.
Okay, did you second, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. And there is a little bit of discussion here. I would like to wish happy birthday to Martha. She's turning 50 this week. So happy birthday, Martha.
How did you know that, Mary?
It's on my perennial calendar, Martha. Ha ha.
Oh,
On mine too.
Thank
Friday, I
you.
think.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Martha.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
happy birthday. All right, I imagine there's consensus for this motion.
Well, and I do miss meeting in person because there's never any cookies and treats.
That's right. All right, well.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Right before you guys adjourn, I just want to remind you, I need you guys to come in and sign the David Cowdrey letter.
Okay, good.
I will make that available. I'll leave it upstairs with Michelle and Martin. You can sign it up there, but I need that to.
Can we stop in tomorrow, Dave?
You may want to make it after 9:30, 10, but yes, you can stop in tomorrow.
Oh,
Okay.
will someone remind me when the next opera meeting is?
It's Thursday, January 27th at 6:30.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
All right.
Yeah, it was a nice her. She didn't mind, not sure why.